You're listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing tonight? Let's see here. Get my correct windows open because I gotta see Gene's here. So since Gene's here, we can.
Recording in progress.
There we go. Recording in progress. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. We're really excited about tonight's episode. Let me get the social just prepped right here. We got Ron with us. So been a long time fan, long time follower, long time friend, and being a contributor now. So super excited to have him here. Let's see here, get that. And yeah, I get to write. And almost put out Gavin's YouTube or Twitter stuff again. So can't do that. He's not on the show. Let's see, round 9, round 8. There we go. Post. So there, we've got the social going out on. I usually retweet this from the MLSFI, but oh well, we'll do this tonight. It's out there on Twitter for the Fantasy Boss account with tonight's stream. So if you would be so kind, please do retweet and share that. Twitter and Blue Sky out there. Going to head over to Reddit right now. Not Reddit. We don't do Reddit anymore. We used to do Reddit. Discord right now, so that we can get the little announcements sent out here. Confirm everyone gets the ping so that they can join the absolute fun. So yeah, thanks so much everyone for joining us. If this is the first time you are joining us live here on YouTube, welcome. We are happy that you have found us. We come to you live pretty much every Monday night to talk about the official MLS fantasy game, just reviews, insights, tips, all sorts of great stuff, early planning. So if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. It helps so much with the algorithm. It just helps so much with grow. I got the record, Gene. Maybe that was an old comment. It just helps so much with our community. And as I started plugging last week after Wojo reminded me that I slacked off and didn't do this, we also have a little YouTube Shorts series this year with captain picks closer to the round. So we'll, of course, cover captain's picks during the show, but we'll wait and see how things pan out and have a little YouTube short video right there. So thanks so much, everyone, for being here. And I think we're doing pretty well, so we will go ahead and get started with the show. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of Round 9 of the 2025 MLS Fantasy Season. This episode is brought to you by MLS's newest joint venture, Board Games, kicking things off with Mousetrap. No, wait, sorry. Actually brought to you by the amazing MLS Fantasy Insider Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to keep this project going. Find out more about our Patreon over at patreon.com/MLSFI. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight Ashley is out, so I'm joined by my co-host, MLSFantasyBoss.com content team lead, Matt Wojo. We'd also like to welcome our very special guest tonight, Ron Birnbaum. Ron is also known as the Fantasy Physician from the MLS Fantasy Strategy Clinic column, new in 2025, which can be found weekly over at MLSFantasyBoss.com. Welcome, both of you guys tonight. How you doing?
Hey there.
I'm doing great. Delighted to be on with you guys.
I guess for those of you who don't realize it, I guess I could be saying Dr. Ron right here, because Ron is a legitimate physician. And so whenever we say fantasy physician, fantasy clinic, we're not lying. This is where the advice is coming. So super happy to have you on, Ron. We're going to do a quick little interview, but I also want to let people know that Ron is not new to the game, and we'll get into that in a second. But Ron has also been a Patreon supporter from almost the beginning, I think, for as long as we've been doing that. He's been a longtime supporter there, so very much appreciate that from him, and just love to see how this has evolved for him to being a contributor to the community at this point. So super, super awesome. So we'll kick things off just like we've done with our special guests this year. A little bit of an interview because, like I said, Ron's played the game for a while, but I want to let you get to know him a little bit so you understand some of his fantasy pedigree. And so, Ron, just kick it off with just tell people how you got into MLS fantasy and your experience playing FMLS.
Yeah, so my experience with MLS fantasy started with being an MLS fan. So I have 3 kids, and when my son, my oldest, was starting to play like AYSO soccer, we started to go see Galaxy games and quickly went from being, and it was a good time for the Galaxy. It was back when they were winning championships before. And we went from, go to a bunch of games to season ticket holders. And then we found the game. I mean, that was back in the era where I just remember there were a lot of Steve Zakuani videos. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was like, I think that's like 2013, 2014. And we played some pretty casually, I would say, by today's standards. But then at some point, my son got old enough that we, instead of like running a team together, we each, he got his own team and then I got my team. And there were a few weeks where all of a sudden he was just killing me. And he was like, "Hey, Dad, do you know there's like a podcast about this whole thing?" And so like that's when I first learned about this podcast. And so we're fans of that. And I want to say something, which is that we like playing with family, or there's a lot of people where it's like it's a spouse, like Ashley and Spencer, or the Red Path father and son, like Skylar and Eli, all these people who are, that's like kind of a family thing. And that's been the case. I have a daughter who plays too. So played, but I would say another turning point was the pandemic really hitting. And in 2020, when all that was going down, like when you guys, and I think at that point it was like you, Ashley, and Blaine, you guys like keeping on going, doing this thing in that crazy time was such a big deal to me, right? Like you're like, first there was no games going on, and then there was like games played, without fans and all that stuff. And then the game started again. It was just kind of a crazy time, but it helped me as a doctor kind of like get through that crazy time, like just this other activity. So I'm forever grateful for you guys. But that also really kind of got me more, is like, I think it was somewhere in there that I started to get on the Discord. And then I'll just say that like last season was my best season. I ended up in the top 10 at 8th. I 4th in the Champions League. It was a good season for Galaxy homers, which might have helped me, right? Because like they were good. And so that's how I got to the game.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear. I know Mike was also with us when we were doing a lot of that stuff during COVID, and that was part of the conversation that we had was, I mean, we were all impacted by it, and we knew that fantasy was just this silly little thing that was there, and the content just went away. Like after round 3, it was gone, and we had that conversation of let's do something that we can do for the community, and it we didn't know how much it would be, or if anybody would even care, but we said let's just keep doing stuff. Let's just do random things. Let's talk about the history. Let's do the Mount Rushmore. Let's do all the just all the things, just so that if at the end of the day it helps distract people, that's what we were going for. So I really appreciate you saying that, because that was part of the goal of just what we could kind of do from our own little bit. So yeah. Well, let's not get sappy, Reid. So let's talk more about your column partner. So how did you and Mike, who goes by Kenobi in the Discord, how did you guys decide on your how do you decide on your weekly strategy topics?
Yeah, well, so, big shout out to Mike Lester, who is Kenobi on Discord and powered by snails in the game. It's just a great guy. And we, I've never met him in person. Looking forward to the day. But, we met on Discord, and I had, sometimes there's somebody you have kind of an affinity for on Discord, right? And over the course of a few years, or a couple of years at least, of like just talking about stuff ourselves and then just absorbing things, when Matt approached me to work on this article and I wanted to do it with a collaborator, I knew exactly who I wanted to talk about. And so some of it was just like the accumulated history of talking about stuff on the Discord, and that we brainstormed up a bunch of stuff, and we have a list, and but also like one thing we wanted to do was be willing to pivot when there was like certain things that just seemed like it was a good thing to talk about. And like for example, pretty early on in the season, it was like people were dealing with the like CONCACAF, all the teams who were playing extra games, obviously some of the best teams playing those games, and like how is that going to affect? So so we just did an article on that, so people are talking about that. So we have a big list of ideas, but we're like ready to call audibles and make switches. And I think Discord's been a big source of that.
It's awesome. Yeah, that clicking with people, you can definitely find it with the server, and so it's awesome to see those. I mean, that's the community. That's the thing that we're always like so focused on now, is like there are people who just want to come in here and have fun, and that's such a great way that this project has evolved into. So tell us, these are kind of the two questions we've given to everybody. What is your general approach to building a fantasy lineup?
Well, one thing I'll say is just last week we wrote an article about sort of that general approach. So I refer people to that, but just to kind of a quick synopsis. First, like I'm kind of like a week-long player, and I am a tinker. I'm an unapologetic tinkerer. Like for me, tinkering is like thinking. It's kind of how I think out the stuff that I'm doing. So I know like tinkering has a bad name by some people, but like I like to do it. But I think like everybody has a certain set of things they need to do, and I do those things too, which is they've got to evaluate matchups. They have to kind of figure out which players within the matchups they like. They need to like set a team and see how it fits budget wise, then absorb more information as it comes in, and then look out for lineups. And like I'm no different. I mean, I think those are basic things. Although I would say that maybe some people scotch over the importance of the matchup thing. That I think I owe my pedigree on that to Christian Ward, who always emphasizes that, as his methods. And so that's in big detail. Now, let me just leave that there. That's it. That's what I do. Oh, one more thing. I do always want to make a lineup before I hear anything else from anybody.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Like I want a gut unaffected lineup. Then I'm willing to like, take on whatever like chalk criticisms or not are there, but like, do your own thinking first would be my thing.
Yeah, no, that's a big one for me too, because especially since like I do prep for the show, and so and more people are putting out content earlier, so it's like, okay, I really need to try like put myself in a little bubble. Let me just try to think. So like what is my idea? What is influence? But yeah, get that first draft and then see. But I'll tell you, this week I was depressed when like I made my team, and then I go to Discord and start seeing other people making their teams, and they're like, yeah, I made this and I have this much money in the bank, and I'm thinking I'm like 2 million behind some people. Holy cow. People in your teams. All right, and final question that we have: what advice would you give to any new player starting in 2025?
Yeah, well, so a piece of advice that goes back to like the beginning for me, but also still super important, and super important to me getting better last year, is to not do this by yourself. In other words, a key part of process for me has been like doing it with my son back in the day, but having kind of a battle buddy or more than one that you like bounce ideas off of, or hey, check this lineup out. And like that's available to everybody who pops on the Discord. But like sometimes, for a big one for me last year was and still has been DMing back and forth some with Verks, Eli Redpath, who's a super good player, and I've learned a ton by doing that with him. I'm sure he's learned less by doing it with me, but like, but like, I give him some bad ideas to reject is probably like a good way of describing our relationship. But I just think even if it's like asymmetric like that there's a sort of a value. So don't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Find a battle buddy.
I love it. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much, Ron, for sharing us some of that, little bit about yourself, and we look forward to hearing your recap and your picks as we're going into this. So let's just start with our recap. Give you a second to catch your breath. We'll get your throat watered down, whatever you need. And Wojo, give us the little recap of how you did this round and just what your general fantasy takeaways were for round 8.
This past round went pretty much like the rest of my season has gone, which has been pretty rough. I don't know what it is. I don't know if anybody else is having the same problems, but it just feels like when you think you have like a beat on a pattern or something like that, or form of some sort, I don't. And so I've kind of had a bit of an up and down. I think I'm sitting about 140-ish, which is pretty uncommon for me. And so as long as I'm getting a green arrow every week, which I didn't this past week, but I was, I think I had gotten up to about 80 or so, along with some of the other folks in Discord, and just didn't do well. I think it was like a 52 or something. It was pretty weak this past week. So working on my approach, really. I've got to start figuring some stuff out. So I wish I had better news on that front, but we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep pushing forward and keep talking to my buddies, my lineup buddies, right, Ron, and Discord, and try to figure out how to turn that around. So that being said, I think some of the surprises that I've seen from this past weekend, the first one is Portland climbing the table. They, at the beginning of the year, looked like they were going to be pretty rough. We thought they might be a defense that you could pick on, and they've actually been surprisingly solid. I'm not a Neville fan as a coach. I think he's garbage, but the results speak for themselves so far. And I wondered if losing some of the talent they lost, they might have some trouble, with Evander leaving especially. But 10 goals in their last 4 games. Look like they're picking it up a little bit, have some wins. I think they're up to like maybe 4th in the West, around that area. So keep an eye out for them. They're not the target that we thought they were so far. Toronto defense, also very surprising. 1 goal against in their last 3 matches. So again, maybe not the defensive target that we're looking at least not at home. I know home and away is often a different performance, but they've been pretty solid. And so the 2 Italians seem to be re-engaged as far as their mental standpoint for the team, and that's only good things for them. So hopefully, you don't ever want to see teams really just suck. That's hard. Hard as a fan, hard as a supporter of the league to see teams like that. But so it's good to see them kind of catch some form. Another surprise, which I don't know if this is so much a surprise, but the SKC defense looks like it's back to normal after last week's clean sheet. Gave up 4 at home, so maybe they're still a strong target to go to pick your attacks against. We wondered how that new coach bounce might be, and they did pull off the clean sheet, the previous weekend, but did not do it this past week. So I still like them as a target. My big disappointment is going to be my home team, Atlanta. That attack, and I've told a few people this, I don't know how to gauge this team. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know which team is going to show up where, at home, away. You put Almiron at the 10, you put him on the wing, who's going to show up when, who's going to produce, where will the points come from each week? I mean, this past week it was Lennon, and so, is it going to be Almiron? Is it going to be Moranchuk? Is it going to be Saba? Is Latte Loft going to do anything? And so I don't know. They're just really hard for me to gauge, and I watch them every week. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and try to guess, each week. And so I'm kind of going to back off picking them unless the matchup is just a peach of a matchup, honestly. There's too many mouths to feed. They just look dysfunctional giving the ball away. There's just not a flow to the play, and they're not passing the eye test for me, and they're clearly not passing the numbers test either for any of us. So super disappointing. Obviously, I don't want that to be, but it is what it is. And then my takeaways. Couple former MVPs rounding back into form, right? Diego Rossi, post CONCACAF Champions Cup, 3 goals in his last 3 matches and a nice run of matchups coming up. Gazdag joining him, hopefully playing that dual 10 role behind Russell Rowe. You got to think that he's got some more good performances coming up. So I really like the way he's playing. I like the way Columbus is just a good team across the board. So bringing in Gazdag he should, in theory, fit really well into that lineup. So I'm kind of excited to see what those two can do together. And then also Carlos Heel, double-digit points 2 of the last 3, double-digit key passes the last 3. Still no goals from open play yet for New England, but Heel is the main set piece and penalty kick taker, obviously the center of that offense, and his numbers are starting to almost look like a little bit like they were, not quite, but definitely some encouraging signs on the individual performances that he's put up. So it's always nice to have another asset that you can pick in the midfield. Especially because earlier this season it's been hit or miss with some of the big names. So glad to see it.
Great. Ron, what about you?
Yeah. So also not a great week. And I sort of feel like start writing a column about fantasy strategy, watch your results just like plummet because you're just like tempting the fate. So I got a 60. That's my 3rd straight week of red arrows, which has me at overall rank 147. I was nibbling just on the outside of 50 right before the Fantasy Champions League break. So it's time to turn it around. But that's how I did this last week, and it was tough. I think my highest score was a 7. I'll talk about a couple of those 7 players, but that's not that great. So, but I'm not the only person in that sort of situation, but so that was my personal week. But in terms of the surprises, so one was like Brian White from Vancouver bagging like 4 goals. And if he's not generous with like letting Rios actually miss a PK, he takes that PK, he just tied the record for goals in a game in MLS. Pretty big deal. So it's still kind of, I think we've known this, he has this in him. He's playing on a very good team. And like he's had some key goals in CONCACAF and a couple in MLS before this. And now he's like in the Golden Boot top kind of zone. So I would just say that was a surprise. It's sort of like, I didn't think about taking him last week, but you can't ignore that. Now I should channel my inner Ashley, which is like, don't just take the guy who got the hat trick or I guess the 4-bagger, next week for sure. But you certainly will get a price rise, that's for sure. And then I wanted to point out something else about Atlanta, which is that Brooks Lennon got a 7. Which is 5 bonus points worth on the strength of like 16 crosses that he put into the box. And that was like a change from what he's been like so far this season. Now, I think there's some caution we have to take because of exactly what Matt was talking about. In other words, that result wasn't like part of a team that's playing well. It was part of a team that needs to probably make some changes. So I don't know if that's going to hold up, but it brings up like an issue which I think we're always on the lookout especially among like defenders, for what I call a triple threat. Somebody who's on a team that can get clean sheets, who makes bonus points, and 5 is a lot of bonus points for a defender, and who could get attacking returns. That set of things together makes a floor almost always between those 3 things. That's like kind of the Wagner type, numbers. And of course, makes a potential ceiling that can be very high. So they're rare birds, but they're important. And so I don't know that he's there yet, but so we'll have to see if that continues. But so that was a surprise. My disappointment, yeah.
Ron, real quick, I do want to point out that Lennon did get pushed up to right wing at halftime in that game. So it is while the performance is definitely encouraging, just have everybody keep that in mind that he ended up getting pushed up to the wing at halftime.
Like if they're playing 4 in the back and he's part of that 4, it may go back to no bonus points and not a lot of that. You have to keep an eye on that game state with him, but it's still noticeable what that potential is, right? Like that's an explosive defense. That's like Orejano, Wagner, him, possibly maybe a couple others, but
sure. Yep.
So my disappointment is Hani Mukhtar. It's not the first time he's been a disappointment, but it's just like, I don't know why I keep doing this, but I keep coming back to like, if he's in a good matchup, I want to take him. And then he just, does something like hands the PK to Surridge. I understand why, but I think I need to kind of lay off Hani till something better happens. And then a couple other general takeaways. Well, specific takeaways. So first, it's that this week saw the return, mostly like coming off the bench after injuries, of some pretty important players. They may not have had the big impact yet in these games, but I think they may change the course of like what's going on with their teams and our fantasy viable people. So the ones I would point out were both Campana and Shankalai back at New England. And New England's maybe had a little turn, but those guys are probably, if they can play to their maximum, are probably improvements over the people who are playing in their stead, which would be Ganago at the wing and Urruti at striker. And so that's that. Jonathan Rodriguez back at Portland has always been an important player, playing on a team that's turned around. And Matt Miazga, a defender, and Miles Robinson, Matt Miazga, like the little problem. I mean, they still had a clean sheet anyhow, but maybe some of the problems with Cincinnati's defense are going to be going away, and he's always viable. So then I guess another thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was Jack McGlynn. I wanted to talk Jack McGlynn science. So Jack McGlynn, who went from being on Philadelphia, being kind of like a marginal, not really MLS, not a fantasy viable player, absolutely has been a viable and important fantasy player. And last week he was. I'm going to say, I didn't have the courage to say this out loud, but I thought he was bad chalk. And the reason I thought that he was bad chalk last week, but actually he's going to be good this week, so he's going to be on my team this week, is this. He's on a team that likes possession.
It's true.
And so if they have the ball a lot and they can get him on the ball a lot, he's got a very high floor from just not just touches, but from key passes. And he's just a very effective player if you can put the ball in his hands. The problem is that if they play teams that are possession teams, they're not very good at taking the ball away from that possession teams. As you would witness by the playing against the Galaxy, down a man, they could not maintain decent possession in that game. So if you look back at McGlynn's bad games, they're against the Galaxy, Miami, Columbus, teams that can hold the ball. And his good games are against the other teams, and that's what he's playing this week. He's playing Colorado, one of the third worst possession in the league. So Jack McGlynn. And last thing on the Galaxy, they're still in bad shape. They're still having trouble moving the ball to the midfield. And so, we'll get back to that, but I just think that that's still the case.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Ron. Yeah, you guys have covered a whole lot. For me, a bad round. Just not really great at all. Ended up on 52 points. Nothing hit when I came through there. Messi captain ended up being a bust at the end of the round. I got 7 points from Ojeda, and my highest points came from Orshano coming off of. I'm all flustered. Orshano coming off the bench with 8. So just pretty disappointing. The mostly of what I have this round are surprises, and it's been the so many early clean sheets that we had last round. I didn't see a lot of that coming. Expected more from Orlando against the Red Bulls, which have struggled. Really surprised about how Benteke was. Had Benteke on my team, 7 shots that guy had, nothing went to the back of the net. Not that I'm complaining, but I was surprised with all of that. Going through here, the Vancouver just blowout of Austin. Debated having White for a minute. Ended up going with a different formation. Didn't think that they would drop that many on Austin, which had a pretty good defensive record. So that was a big shock for me. And then of course the clean sheet with Chicago, the double clean sheet with Miami. All of that was a shocker. And I think you already nailed it, Wojo. That 4 points for Portland definitely had to do with Sporting Kansas City, but is also something that, I was also tracking, looking forward to seeing more of Gazdag in Columbus and seeing how he plays there, because they really did need some more oomph there. And you had mentioned, Ron, Cincinnati's defense. Yes, Miazga did come on in the second half near the end of the game, so getting back towards that more A-level defense there in the back. But been missing a lot of players for Cincinnati, and that's been hurting them. But Anunga has been doing fantastic things in the defensive midfield. Normally, with Nwobodo being out, that's where a lot of questions are for Cincinnati. But Anunga has been able to step in there. Engel has been doing amazing. So there's been a few more budget-focused defenders that people have been able to get for Cincinnati. I've still been sticking with Orshano because the last few rounds, even without getting a goal, which is why people pick him, is because he's very out of position, not just moving up for those attacks, but oftentimes kind of being in a playmaker role, especially with Evander gone. He's not been getting the goals, not been getting the assists, but he's still been bringing in 7, 8, 9 points. And so that's great with a lot of the action there. So a lot of that going through. But also, if you take a look through just some of the names who scored, again, just some different people are scoring. And so we're seeing some of that. There's some old names that are coming back in. There's some new guys who are getting the scores, but we're seeing some of the names that we talked about as well. I know Beal was one that we talked about from Charlotte, and he had a good round last week. Charlotte got the clean sheet on the road, which is something that I know we've mentioned before, as they tend to be one of the better teams you could take a flyer on with someone on the road, though they're expensive. And so that's still been a bit of the issue. But not the best round. Some of this for me was just trying to make some of the money fit with some of the attackers who I wanted, and they just didn't come through at the end of the day. So looking over at chat, some fantastic rounds right there. People with the 70s, the 80s, 60s, very good. Mike, I feel your pain. I saw a great comment on Blue Sky, and I wanted to share for anyone who is feeling down, like Wojo here, who is feeling down. And Denise over at Blue Sky made this comment and said that this is her first year really paying attention to the fantasy team. Hope you're listening and you can hear your little shout out. But she is determined. She determines how well she does based on the average score. So she scored 55 points this round, and the average score was 48. So she is calling that a good week. You know what, Denise? I agree that if you got higher than a 48, you did better than the average score of the game. Now, we know that the average score of the game includes people who aren't playing. So that might not be the average score of like people in that top 100 or people on the server, but you are better than the average player. All of us are better than the average player for this round. So I agree, Denise, that is a great sunny side up, take an approach from this. And so if you did not get higher than 48, don't worry. We are in Fantasy Champions League Qualifier 2. There is still Qualifier 3 and 4 right around the corner, and you have plenty more opportunities. And if not, just come and have fun with the community, as Ron was already talking about. So, but yeah, it was a rough week. People probably saw my Twitter post as well. It's just like getting pushed back down in that hole. every time this week. I was like, that game did not. Oh, here's another. Oh, Messi didn't. Okay, there we go. So it was a rough week. These things happen. It's part of the fun. And I know some people are discouraged, but I encourage you to have fun. And if you're not, come to the server, chat with other people, just share your miseries as well as your successes, and just be a part of the community, because that's what we're all here for at the end of the day. So we're going to take a quick break right now, and then when we come back, we're going to start talking about how you can get refocused on round 9 and get ready for this upcoming week. Okay, let's see what Patrick's in chat. I haven't noticed you in chat for a little bit, Patrick. And if you've been in chat and I haven't missed you, I'm so sorry. But welcome back, Patrick. Let's see here. Let's see here. Get the social for the next segment. Denise, I hope you are listening, because I saw your post right before I was getting ready to get stuff ready, and I was like, you know what? I'm calling that out. I love it. I love it so much. So there it is on the Twitters. Here it is on the Blue Skies. And delete that. Come up here. Go back to my team for this week. And don't forget to change the overlay. See, this is the fun thing about being on the show, Ron, is you get to see all the behind the scenes stuff that happens. And everybody listening gets to see it as it's happening right here, but you get to hear the before chat and the after chat and the all the stuff. Yeah. So this is all the fun things.
Behind the scenes.
That's right.
The witty banter.
The witty banter, exactly. All right, so there we go. We've got that ready, so let's...
Backstage pass, right? Like
ooh, I like it. I like that. Absolutely, the backstage pass. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome back. We're talking the round 9 preview for this upcoming round for MLS Fantasy. First, quick little housekeeping for what's coming up. All the games start on Saturday, April 19th at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with Austin FC versus Ron's own LA Galaxy. This is slightly different than our usual Apple TV lineup, in that all of the games are playing on Saturday. So we've got the 7:30s, we've got the 8:30s, 9:30, but pay attention that when we get to the final 2 games, the Portland Timbers versus LAFC game starts at 8:15. And then the San Jose versus Sporting Kansas City game, which is the last one of the round, starts at 10:30. So we got a 10:15 and a 10:30. A little bit different. Normally everything's are on the 30 that we're going through here, but that is a different one. Ron pointed that out before the show. Want to make sure that people do understand that, in case you're looking at some of these teams. I could see why you would be looking at these teams potentially with your ruse and everything. So that's an important one to make sure that you are aware of. Other than that, we have nobody on a double game week. We have nobody on a bye, and we have nobody who is out for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. So everyone's back in the mix here. So let's see what these lineups are, and we'll be able to just, with hope, get as strong of a lineup as we can for a lot of these teams. So with that in mind, let's start talking about who you guys are actually targeting with the lineup and the mix of everything that is going on tonight or next weekend. And so, Ron, let's start with you, kicking things off with keepers and defenders. Who are you looking at?
So, as I said before, I usually, I think matchups before players, usually. And so obviously for keepers, most of the game is trying to see where clean sheets might happen and very little else. So the way I ran my numbers, I thought some of the best defensive matchups were Austin against the Galaxy. I saw some discussion in chat about whether that one might be kind of a different bad chalk situation from Tuscan and others, because the Galaxy, adding back some of its offensive firepower. But I just on the numbers and a little bit on eye test, I'm still think Austin's got a good possibility there. And then I certainly, I think Sounders versus Nashville is possible. Houston is not terrible, but I really like Minnesota versus Dallas, right? Like Minnesota hosting Dallas. And RSL, whose defense is not that good, but Toronto's offense is pretty bad. And so I think that, like, for later stuff, that one's still possible. And Portland, also Portland LAFC. So drawing from those games, I initially come up with a Stuver to Fry. Fry's a little cheaper, like Keeperoo. So starting get Stuver on the back end, if that's the person on your bench, and then the front end, Fry. But I think somebody could look at St. Clair or Pantemis as other choices, but a little more money. One little thing I would point out, people like Stuver, St. Clair, and Pantemis, those are some people who sometimes save a penalty for you. So there's not a lot of ceiling on keepers, but we've seen that there's a few keepers who are better penalty stoppers, and so you never know. As far as defenders go, again, drawing from those games, names that caught my eye would be early on would be Gallagher, and in part because has a more attacking potential, or Brendan Hines-Ike, who's a good bonus point earner at the center back position. Then from Minnesota, I like Rosales, and I think Rosales is clearly better than Bongi Longwane. Longwane came out of the game at 57 minutes. He doesn't have much of a bonus point producing floor, and I don't think the price is better. Rosales would be the choice there. Kai Wagner is a possibility. He's expensive, so you have to make maneuvers to afford him. But I think Kai Wagner is a good choice. And then later defenders to consider would be to me, an RSL defender would be viable. Maybe Glad or Vera, both of whom I've liked over the years. And Finn Sermon would be probably the one I would turn to at Portland. So those are my list. I think Orejano is always in play to consider too.
Wojo.
I think, I mentioned some of the challenges that some of us have been having this season, and I think part of it for me has been with the way that I've approached defense and goalkeepers. And Ron, you'll probably remember this last season. We talked a lot about some of our abilities to pick clean sheets and kind of our success rates and things like that. There was a lot of talk in Discord towards the middle to end of last year about that, and how some of us had more success than others, and why that was, and that whole discussion. But this year, it's just been almost like the obvious ones are not the ones to pick. And I know, a lot of people kind of jumped on the taking an offensive player and forget about clean sheets, just pick somebody with some offensive upside. And it's really worked out in a lot of cases. And I've had a little bit of trouble getting my mind around that for some reason. And so I think I'm just going to start, going with the pack on that. Defenders that are playing out of position, Ahmed, and I'm not saying for this week, but players like Ahmed, like Orejano, I think Davis from SKC, Sealy from Montreal is another name that's getting thrown out there a lot, of guys that are really showing some serious offensive prowess, or playing out of position in the midfield or on the forward line. I think, because of the unpredictability with clean sheets right now, I think that's the wise way to go. Wagner was the first one I put in my lineup. I'm going to be honest with you. My total value is not as high as a lot of others in the Discord, but ultimately, man, that's a matchup. That's going to be a good matchup. He's torched Atlanta before, and put up some massive ceiling weeks against Atlanta in the past. And I know Philadelphia is not the strongest especially after losing Gazdag, and their attack is kind of not really on form. But I think it's a really great matchup for him, and I think and this is saying a lot. I think the paying up for a defender is worth it with him this week. But I mean, I know Seattle's getting a lot of love. Seattle has a great defense. Nashville is hit or miss at times, especially if Mukhtar is going to, be hot and cold, run hot and cold. Ron mentioned Minnesota. Dallas is missing Musa, or could be missing Musa this week, which is going to be huge for them. And then there's, the early options of Austin. They're in a great, switcheroo position. And then there's some high risk potential. I think some teams like RSL, New England, maybe even Red Bull, or Orlando are some punts that you could take, more likely on the bench than starters, but they've got some cheaper players that you can fit in. RSL you can use as fallback, and they have some clean sheet opportunity, but I think that just, especially for this week when there's no really obvious clean sheet matchups, I think you just kind of got to go for some defenders that either have super high ceiling, playing out of position, or maybe they have a high floor, like a Jackson Reagan on Seattle, or any of the Columbus guys. I know they're playing Miami this week, so that may not be the best option, but a player like that. I know Waterman on Montreal is another one that's been talked about lately. And so those are kind of where I'm going. As far as keepers, I've been picking cheap guys. Again, with the clean sheets being so unpredictable. I mean, Oscar Ustari got one last week, and I don't know that any of us expected him to get one in that match.
Again, $4 million well spent, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately, I don't know that at Columbus is the right place to do that, but as a bench punt for $4 million, I mean, you could do a lot worse. And so there's some fairly cheaper ones. Galese is only 6. Ivicic is under 7 from New England, and those might be some interesting bench punts if you don't want to pay up for Stuver, which is going to be what a lot of people are doing against Galaxy. So those are some options.
I will say I thought I saw Ron react when you mentioned this one. So take it, Ron.
No, well, I just to add a little color commentary on the kind of like numbers and clean sheet calling. So like last year, I did a little study of some of the very best players of this game, of like overall how often do they correctly in real conditions, like in game conditions, call clean sheets. And the answer was about 40% of the time. I want to do that again, and that may end up being an article later this season. But like the point is, even really good players, like it's hard, and it was hard last year. It seems even harder this year. And so I don't think your core strategies should be built around calling clean sheets. So really agree with what Matt's saying there.
I think I'll throw a few out this week and we'll see how they come out. I will also add though, one thing I did notice today, if you're looking at Seattle, I saw that Jackson Reagan, I think, picked up a hamstring injury. So he only did 45 minutes last week. So he may likely not be available. Compare the strength of that team without him as you will. But that's just one little addition I'll put in there. Otherwise, you guys covered a lot of it. The keeperoo, from what I can see and what I can tell, the chalk keeperoo is going to have Stuver on the back end of it. And that is simply because that Austin LA Galaxy 145 game opens up everybody else for who you might want to have on the back end. Of course, the same could be said to for Columbus versus Miami, but I don't think anyone is really looking at that game for clean sheets both on either side.
Unless Messi is out.
Yes.
Unless Messi is out. Well, but still, they've still got bite even with Messi not being there, with Suarez and others like that. So but I think it would lean more towards Columbus with sort of some of the form that they've had so far this year. Yes, without Messi, Columbus does look better. But Stuver does give you the best look there. I agree with what Ron was saying. Austin's been looking really good. LA is getting some of that bite back. There's some price in there, but that's definitely something that's going to open it up going from there. After that, just starting to go through there For me, I have Dane St. Clair coming in there for Minnesota and Dallas. I'm not 100% on Dallas being consistent with its scoring. Feel like Minnesota has done good enough that I like that. Um, some of those other games from there, the RSL Toronto, that's at RSL and that's in altitude. So that's always a wild card with that game. So that could fall in RSL's favor. But Toronto has been getting it. That Italian connection we mentioned, that has been working for them. Portland, LAFC. I mean, I could see goals both sides there. I think both of those teams have the abilities. A sneaky one could be San Jose. I mean, there's some question marks about Sporting Kansas City still. I will say though that when you look at the numbers at home, San Jose is allowing a little bit more than a goal a game, and Sporting Kansas City is averaging a little bit better than a goal a game on the road. So could be a 1-1.
Sorry to break in,
No.
but I think that Daniel, the very good goalkeeper from San Jose, was injured that last game, and Earl Edwards came in. So if it is Earl Edwards, it's sort of like a double-edged sword.
For sure.
He is bad, and like probably could, it may be that they have a lot of XG against them in general and haven't been as bad, I think, because of Daniel. On the other hand, Earl Edwards probably super cheap too, but maybe for reasons. So
yeah, it's rough. A lot of those middle matches are definitely one. I mean, one that jumps out to me, Red Bulls DC. I'm not quite sure how to take this. I'm not super high on Red Bulls DC. It's just like there's always some opportunities there with Benteke, and so I don't think that's a good match. The New England one has me kind of puzzled as well. I've seen some New England keeper moves there. New York City's been able to score on the road. New England has allowed a lot of shots. They're both kind of middling teams right there, and so it's hard to tell what's going to happen. So, and then again, even Charlotte. I mentioned Charlotte, Super Fortress Charlotte. They've allowed the most shots in the league, so they're giving chances to people. And San Diego is a team that can take advantage of that. So normally, where I'd be inclined to kind of lean towards a Charlotte or a Kalina, I'm not so sure about that one early on this week. Otherwise, you guys nailed it. My general approach to defenders this year has been looking for the out of positions, looking for the value. You should probably be able to afford a couple of more expensive guys by this point of the year, and I'm still going to kind of put those under 10 million. You should probably still be able to afford at least a couple of people in the high 7 to maybe low 9 range on your team right there, to have some quality. But out of position people and those guys who are just cheap that are playing, I think is the best way to stretch that there. And I agree, from the same reasons I mentioned earlier about Orshano, tends to be a nice one to put on your bench usually, especially with this middle game. You'll be able to see some stuff if you want those points for him. But been good to see Evander still not back in the lineup yet. So, but yeah, good cover. Going over to chat real quick. Yeah, seeing a lot of what I'm saying here. Got Galese being mentioned. Got Stuver being mentioned. Fry being mentioned. Yeah, people are all over with the keepers, but it has been Stuver who has been kind of a consistent back end one right there. A lot of options for that front keeper to see where you want to roll with that, and I think a lot of them can be justified and it makes sense. Let's move on now to midfielders. Wojo, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I've got 3 nailed on, pretty well nailed on right now. Espinoza was one of the first ones that I put in my lineup this week as well. After SKC's matchup this past weekend, I think with the way San Jose is actually scoring goals, yeah, he was definitely one, and he's playing well, even as a wingback. He's still dangerous. Carlos Gil is the next one, for a lot of the reasons that I stated earlier in the stream. He's got a great matchup, and just a ton of key passes, just a ton of them. The last 3 matches, double digits every time. And then I always wonder if I'm going to get on fraud watch because of this. But Forsberg, Emil Forsberg.
Oh, I feel it. I feel it.
I'm not a fan of his in general. Besides being a piece of crap human, he's which we won't go into right now. But he never impresses me when he plays. I know he's on a lot of free kicks and is an important member of that Red Bull attack. This would be more for the DC matchup. I think DC is just bad, and picking players against DC usually bodes well for a lot of us. So he's just such an integral part of that attack. I think it's probably wise. I think he'll be pretty chalky. I don't care for him, and he doesn't usually produce when I pick him. But again, sometimes you just got to play the matchup, and I think this is a good one for it. And then after that, Ron, you said a lot of interesting things about McGlynn. He is in my lineup right now. That could change, but I think you're right. I think he's in a good bounce back spot in this game. Some of the other names that I looked at were Luna against Toronto. Again, playing at home at altitude. He's not as consistent as I'd like in general, but obviously we saw what he did a couple weeks ago, and he has that in his arsenal. So, it could easily happen. He'd probably be more of a bench play for me. Gazdog's another one. I mean, Miami can be scored on. They're not such a leaky defense as they have been in the past, but I'm really curious to see how he's going to line up with Columbus and what him and Rossi can do together. So another probably bench option. DaCosta from Portland has been putting up solid numbers, and that's a decent matchup. He's just super active in that attack. And then the last one I had is potentially Uzuni from Austin. Another kind of on the cheaper side, below 9. I don't know. I haven't actually looked yet on whether or not he is how involved is he in free kicks and taking set pieces. Maybe somebody in chat can weigh in, and I know there's several in the Discord that could. But he's a little on the cheaper side. Nice early matchup if you want to play him from the bench. Seems to like to shoot a good bit, which I always like in my midfielders. I don't know how I feel about the Austin attack, and you guys might be able to weigh in a little bit on that. It feels very low ceiling for me, but it's a pretty good matchup, and it's nice timing. He's cheap, and if he's a good player. It's just a matter of whether that attack will start clicking, and I feel like it has to at some point, right? So again, he would be an early bench play, but that's an option.
Can I add something to that, which is also the Galaxy is going to have something like a makeshift back line next game because Maya Yoshida is still out with a hamstring injury, and Zanka got a red card in the last game. So you're looking at maybe Eric Zavaleta, who is not a great defender, stepping in, or what they did kind of when they had the red, like after the red card, they've done this before, which is to have Cerrillo play in the back. So I also think that, like Austin has not generated a lot of offense. It has to be said, but they are going to be up against a defense that hasn't done that well when it had everybody there, and it's going to be a makeshift back line. So would add that.
Ron,
good call. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah. Well, and you did mention many of the people that were on my list. There's a few people who I think who listen to the podcast. My daughter is one of them, who's always like, I don't want to listen to all that early stuff. I don't want to listen to early stuff. I just want to hear the player picks. So one I'll just emphasize is McGlynn, I think, and this may sound like a repeat, which is McGlynn, good idea, because I think he does well against teams that let Houston have the ball, and I think that's going to happen with Colorado. So if Houston's possession is good, they'll do better. So they did well against LAFC, but not against the Galaxy, not against other teams that possess the ball. So I do like McGlynn. I have him on the field. I also agree with Heel as a central player in a team that's turning it around. SB in a probably like the highest kind of XG matchup as a key player there. I'm of course I'm interested in Gazdag too. I think he's a bench play because you still kind of don't know exactly how that's going to work. But and also it's very possible he's like one of the best penalty takers this league has seen for it, and so he may end up if it was like it's Rossi before, it may now be Gazdag. So that is another factor. I'd like to try to take the penalty taker if I can swing it on a team. Quinn Sullivan is another one that I'm considering because I like that matchup and he's got a good floor. And then I'll just say that, well, if Evander somehow sneaks into the lineup, I always have to consider him at least and feel that way a little bit about Dreyer and Ojeda. Forsberg, boy, I mean, one of the things, this is a different way of saying something you said, but sometimes there's a really good matchup, but there's just not a good player to put in place for that matchup. And in the old days, New York Red Bulls were that team, right? They had this committee midfield, and you could never count on who would do anything. And so Forsberg intermittently does really well, but yeah. Anyhow, I'm not likely to take him. I understand why people are taking him, but I'm not likely to be one of them.
Yeah, I was in the same conundrum with Forsberg, and so he's definitely someone on the bubble for me. Even against DC, his stats have been so bad. And so that is 100% the match. Is you're hoping that you get a Forsberg from a year or two ago at that game to capitalize on what opportunities are out there. And I watched that DC Cincinnati game, and they had some horrible defensive actions there, almost scoring on themselves multiple times, which only makes me think, does own goal have a higher chance of getting a better score in that game than Forsberg does? So, but yeah, he's in my team right now, mostly because I'm holding that 9.8 value for someone in that general range to see just things, how they kind of come better. But Gazdag would be a perfectly fine one to drop in there, have on the bench, and go. So you guys touched on so many of the ones that I'm looking at right there. For me, Heel would normally be a bubble, but I just love his stats that he has right there. Quinn Sullivan, I think, is one that's a fantastic call out. Less than 2% ownership right there. And of course, as we just said, Gazdag is gone, and you look at some of the numbers that Sullivan's been getting, even a few games when he was there. But he's right there, double digits, fairly consistently, or just knocking on the door there with key passes, so getting 2 or 3 points right there. Gets a few shots in right there as well, and he's had not as many goal actions with the goals or assists, but he's got a lot of those underlying bonus points. So I can't help but agree with Ron. Not as many minutes, doesn't always go full 90, so that's one to consider. But they're this week at home against Atlanta. It looks like a good matchup. So if you can't swing someone like Wagner, then perhaps a Sullivan helps you fill that same kind of a role for cheaper. He's about maybe almost $1 million cheaper than Wagner is there in the midfield. So just going to go real through quick with some of the other notes that I had. So I'll touch on Chicago. Cincinnati, they're rebuilding their defense. Chicago's been doing pretty well at getting some production. They've got Gutierrez back, so they've got some of their DPs in there. It'd be a bench threat, I would definitely say, with Cincinnati, because they are getting, as I mentioned before, Anunga's been doing really great with Nwobodo not being there. Don't know when he's going to be coming back. They've been doing well with the defensive options that they had. Celentano's been playing out of his mind with a lot of these actions. But, I can see why you might want to take a glance at Chicago. Beal, definitely one that's been doing really well, and I do think that is worth looking at with the Charlotte match. Got a good price point there. You've got some other Portland options we can cover, And yeah, just going through that list real quick, I think you guys have touched on a lot of it. I don't think we mentioned. I mean, I had Rusnak on my list with a question mark right here. Some of that's because not quite sure what's going on with Seattle. Some of it potentially with Reagan injured. How's that going to work? Rusnak's had some good numbers, but he also has some blips. Not quite sure what to expect from Nashville at times. But I'm still thinking Rusnak's maybe around a price point that I don't know if I like compared to other names that we mentioned that I feel better about. Just frankly. So going to chat real quick. Let's see here.
It's not Moranchuk week, Eli.
I just
I'm just pointing that out. He's tried to take him the last 2 weeks, and I've had to talk him out of it. So, Eli,
oh yeah,
for you.
No, here's chat. Ojeda. So Orlando on the road to Montreal. Montreal played their first home game last week. They lost 0-1. Orlando, Ojeda is usually one that we tend to go for. New data still coming in for Montreal at home. So that's a little bit of an outlier, but I can see how Ojeda would be attempting for you. He got 7 points last week. So I mean, the guy was my top scoring midfielder last week for me. So I can see why you'd be tempted there, and I can follow that logic going through there as well. Okay, I think that's touched a whole lot there, DaCosta. So let's move on now and start talking about forwards. Ron, who do you like?
Yeah, so I like Lionel Messi for pretty much obvious reasons, but I'd say that that was a pretty high scoring game last year at Miami playing at Columbus. So I think that's it's still a good choice, obviously. And then the way I'd organize the next things is I'm interested in the pair of strikers from Minnesota, and I'm interested in the pair from San Jose. And I'm not saying I want to take both, but so it's Yeboah and / Tani Oluwaseyi, or Cristiano Arango or Joseph Martinez. And I think one thing that's sort of nice about those pairs is who knows who will actually score? And I know that may cause a little anxiety because it's sometimes you want to go with the team where there's one guy who's the guy, but you have a lower price one and a higher price one. So if you're playing with your budget because you want to accommodate a little more expensive defenders or something like that, then you can go with Tani or Joseph, who've had really good games too. They probably have price rise still coming from their recent games. And then, but if you're I want to go with kind of the man, then maybe that's still Yeboah or Arango. So those would be my main ones. I think that, because we're still waiting for Baribo to come back from, his earlier season form, but I think he's still a consideration. And, if you like the New York Red Bulls matchup, your man is Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, but I probably won't have him. But I think he's a consideration.
Wojo.
Yeah. So I mean, Messi. This feels like one that is he going to play? Is he going to travel? Probably, because I don't think they have anything the next week. But I don't love the matchup. Columbus has just got a good defense. They're going to be at home, possibly controlling possession a little bit more. But it's Messi. I mean, I think we've talked about this time and time again. If he's in the lineup, you almost have to have him. Otherwise, if he goes off, you're in trouble, really. And so, he'll be in my lineup if he's in there. Thankfully, it's an early game, so we'll know soon, and we won't have to wait till Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's good. Positive for everybody. And so then we can lots of options to pivot if you need. I'm 100% with you, Ron, about the San Jose duo there. Again, I really like the matchup against SKC. I think you have some really good points. Joseph obviously is on form. is he going to continue to get 90 minutes? I don't know if he has 90-minute legs anymore, but he's had 90 the past two matches. A couple goals the week prior, and then he had an assist this past week and did really well. Arango seems to be, he's shooting a ton. He's getting his shot bonus every week. He's getting his key pass bonuses every week. So even if he's not getting the goal contribution, Arango is still putting up a nice floor. So that's good. So, but he's 2 million more at least, and so you do have to kind of weigh that out. But I think I would be on Arango first priority if I could afford him. But Joseph could be a really good backup, or maybe a fallback if you need one, cheap fallback. I think my third one, if I'm ranking him, it's probably Rossi. He's just been on such great form, and I really think that he's going to keep it up. I think Gonzaga is going to add a lot to that lineup. I think it's a good shout. It's a little expensive shout. Baribo, Ron, I think you mentioned Baribo against Atlanta. Hasn't been in form, but man, that Atlanta D just switches off. Like they usually have a good, quarter of the game where they just switch off or something like that and just get battered. So it would not surprise me to see if Baribo got a brace, Choupo-Moting, again, I'm not a fan. I just, he's gotten some PKs. I was not a fan of him in Germany. I'm not a fan of him here. But again, it's DC, so he's definitely a viable bench play. I don't think he shoots quite as much as I like in a forward. I usually like to try to get those bonus points from shots, and I don't think he's hit one. And then one, I just get done saying that, and then I talk about this guy, but one like super cheap bench play could be Vasquez from Austin. I know the attack has been not great, but it's a good matchup. He's like 7 million, so if you're still kind of stuck in the budget like me, good early bench play. It's a risk, hugely risky due to his form, but he's got pedigree in the league. From everything I've heard from a lot of the Austin fans and the Discord, he's playing well. It's just he's not converting his chances, and so is this the week that he can versus Galaxy? Galaxy's a team that we should be targeting on offense, and so maybe this is a differential pick. Maybe Rand will talk about him later on this week. I think again, man, I can't pass up the deal sometimes. So I may have to, but we'll see. But if you're looking for a budget pick, you could do a heck of a lot worse with the matchup than Vasquez. So those are really the ones. I don't love a ton of forwards, but there's enough to get by.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. I'm looking at Messi. I'm looking at a San Jose keeper myself. For the third keeper, I've not had great luck with nailing 3 keepers, so I'm willing to take some shots on maybe some differential guys there. I get Rossi. Looking at some budget, because again, like I said earlier in the show, a couple million behind some people with some of the lineups I've seen here. Mentioned earlier, like the LAFC match, forward could be where you're able to squeeze in some offensive players if you're not able to fit a midfielder. You're trying to just cover all the spots. So if you're not able to get Portland into your front, maybe going with a Kelsey on your bench as like a bench forward could be someone coming in there. A couple of goals last week, another goal maybe a couple of rounds before there. Usually off the bench, see what happens with him. Saw him in Cincinnati, so like I get it. The kid's got some skill, but just see how he's used. 6'8", not a bad bench shout with that. So could see where that goes.
If Jonah's back, he's another Portland option as well.
Yeah. And so just checking the lineup, see who's there. Again, that's one that plays later, so may not work for your coverage. That might be something if you're running an auto route might work better, or if you have a a scrub defender and you're looking at your options, that could be someone who's going to be easier to fit in with a strategy like that. Otherwise, looking at some of those early games and just see where people slot it based on your budget. But going to chat real quick, see what people have. Let's see here. Yeah, Rossi, Tani, Yaboa, Baribo. Yeah, I mean those are all the names you guys have covered for who the real go-to ones are going to be.
Damiani got some love. Is getting some love from from Union. I think he's under 7 even. So if he's taking Gazdag's spot in the lineup, that could be interesting.
Mm-hmm. We can see if it ends up being a forward who is getting like key passes and assists as well as getting their own shots. That's a good forward. That's a good forward right there. Just see how he ends up being used. All right, well, let's wrap everything up tonight with our captain's picks. So let's start with you, Wojo. If not Messi, who?
Messi. I'm riding. Well, I guess I'll ride him till 4 o'clock, right? Until we find out if he's in the lineup. I think Heel is pretty solid. I think either of the San Jose guys like Espinosa or Arango are super solid. I think those would probably be where I would end up if Messi is not in there. But I mean, I'm just too conservative. If Messi's in there, he's getting a captain.
Ron.
I just agree with Matt exactly. Like Messi, if not Heel, and maybe SB if I sort of, yeah. That's it.
Yeah, I know people went back and forth last year about not last year, like last week talking about McGlynn. We saw where he can get that bus, and I think you put it really well, Ron, with the situations that really put him in a good position. So yeah, Messi off the top. After that, not looking at defenders. Espinosa would be one that I would definitely look at. We just love these late game captains, don't we? Right there. Heels bonus points. I definitely see why that would be one that you might want to go with. Depending on how well you like that Philly Atlanta matchup, you could go with a forward or a midfielder, or super brave if you wanted to go with Wagner.
I knew you were going there
with that. I mean but that's too risky right there. But I think for me it would come down that betting against Sporting Kansas City, you're looking at Messi and then pivoting to someone from San Jose as being who would top out my Messi backup captain right there. Similar things in chat here. Espinosa being brought in there. So yeah. But I have the pleasure of having the captain's short this week, and so as we get closer to Friday, I'll keep an eye on what's there, keep an eye on the chit chat, and let you know what my final verdict is on who I will captain, and if not Messi, who I will then look at as a pivot captain from there to see where everybody ends up at the end of this round. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you so much to Ron for being here with us to chat fantasy and help prepare for the upcoming round. Let's just end the show as we do every week with our plugs. Ron.
So 2 little sets of shout out. One, please check out the Fantasy Strategy Clinic article. And I really want to shout out my collaborator in that, Mike Lester Kenobi on Discord. Just has been just so great to work with at that, and such a great member of our community. Really appreciate him. And then I want to shout out my own family for a second. 2 of whom are really good fantasy players when they have the time to actually do it. My and like if they give the time, they will beat me consistently. That Otis and Lucia, Yopod, that's Yopod, and FC Kathy's Cookies, or Kathy's Cookies FC. And then the 2 in my family who don't. And everybody out there has somebody who supports their fantasy habit, right? So that's like my daughter Clementine, my wife Lisa, who also are all just taking on big things right now, so that we can keep playing fantasy. So that's my shout out.
Awesome. Wojo.
I love it, Ron. That's awesome. So I'm gonna plug this week and on Saturday we're going to be doing a Twitter or X AMA from the MLS Fantasy Insider account Saturday, April 19th from 12 to 1. So feel free to send your player picks, your questions, send them ahead of time if you want, and we'll answer as many as we can from 12 to 1 Eastern on Saturday. So that'll be right before about when the first lineups are dropping for that early game, for that 1:45 game. Use hashtag #AskTheBoss or hashtag MLS Fantasy. We'll be checking that. And like I said, it'll be fun. So jump on, ask questions, and we'll see if we can help you guys out.
Yeah, that's a great plug. I know the last one we did at the beginning of the season went really well, super popular. So be sure to check that out, since not getting a lot of that coverage from the MLS Fantasy account anymore. But yeah, Wojo's here. We're here to help step in for that. As for me, I am going to, again, plug MLSFantasyBoss.com. Wojo has worked up some fantastic articles this season that we have coming out there, a great little lineup, including Ron's article along with Kenobi's article. Be sure to check that out as they start rolling out this week. The Discord community, as we've mentioned multiple times, head over to that. The easiest way, MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. It's fun. It's free. It's just an awesome place to hang out and just enjoy that fantasy community, even in these down times. Enjoy that fantasy community, the memes, the jokes, all that good stuff. It's good fun, a great place to go. And so be sure to check that out if you have not already. And that's pretty much it. We have all sorts of fun things going on, and just so happy to see this community continue to grow. And as we just try to provide the best advice that we can for you every week. So with that being said, as always, good luck.